and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to have something a little bit more for the writers rather than just the people that are here for the history, but I think even if you follow me for the history, you will hopefully find this interesting as well. So I recently talked about how I've got a book that was one bigger book, and some early feedback led me to realize that the book could and should be split up into 3 different books. So I had to do a little bit of work to make that happen, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the process that I used. So one of the first things that I needed to do when I decided to turn this epic family novel into a trilogy was to figure out story arcs. And I figured that I needed one full story arc for each story in order to not have it be an incomplete story. When I first planned the book, and this one has gone through so many different phases over the years, I had 2 main characters. Matthew, whom if you've read all my novels, you might remember Matthew from Sammy's Struggle. He's the Confederate soldier that Sammy and Emma has to figure out whether or not they want to help him or not. So that character was Matthew Hayes, and he is now my main character in Stay the Course. And the initial idea for this book kind of grew from that character, and I wanted it to be more of a young adult novel as well. I wanted to show different aspects of the war, and I also wanted it to appeal to both boys and girls. And one of the core things that I wanted to do was to teach everything that's necessary for me to teach my 8th graders in the Civil War unit in this one story, but it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I had Matthew being this soldier side of the story, and then his cousin Bridget kind of playing the civilian side of the story. And again, like I just said, it grew from there. So once I focused in on this book, I originally had the stories of both Matthew and Bridget planned out. They had their own story arcs. And that book, I had the main story arc come from Matthew, just his growth and development. And when I was first planning the book, I had just Matthew's journey as the main part, like I said, and then Bridget's journey was right there as well. And it was very much a dual point of view. You're getting things from both sides of them. Well, then other characters started playing a bigger role, and as I was writing, I got to kind of know Bridget's family at a deeper level as well. I have Bridget having 4 brothers and 1 sister, and so then it kind of grew from where I wanted these brothers and sisters to also have their points of view. I started writing a few scenes from the point of view of the other siblings. So for one example, the oldest brother is Michael, and he had been trained at a military academy, so kind of having his view on the war and how things are going from that point of view. So I would have some scenes from him. I would have scenes from the brother Gabriel, who's kind of a goof off, but then you kind of find out why he's stopped seeming to care so much. And then you've got another brother, Raphael, who feels very strongly about the war in a different way from most of the rest of his family. And so he's going to have a pretty big decision to make within the war. Then I've got Margaret, the older sister, as well as Uriel, the younger brother. Though Uriel does not have as much of a viewpoint in the story. He is very much younger, 6 years old. And so maybe one day he will have his own book of his own, kind of like Sammy ended up with his own book. Now, I had to figure out in terms of story arcs and character arcs exactly what I was going to do with all of this, moving it from this one main book into a trilogy. So once I decided that I wanted to delve deeper into these characters, I had to figure out their story arcs, their character arcs, and figure out exactly how it was going to fit in with Matthew and Bridget. As I was writing these scenes, I realized that I wanted to dig even deeper into these characters and make them even more of a solid character, point of view, main character. So I kept writing and expanded and ended up with 6 points of view that I all loved. That's also one of the reasons that I decided to make it into a 3-book series. I was able to look more at these relationships and how all of their lives were heavily affected by the Civil War. Then there was also a piece that happened, an event that happened a year prior to the beginning of the story, and that really sets forth some misbeliefs in all of their lives and how that affects them and how they're living out their lives. And I would tell a little bit more, but I don't want to give too much away because it is some pretty big plot points with that. So, since Matthew's story had been my overarching storyline in the original book, I decided to keep his story to be the overall overarching storyline throughout the entire trilogy. Now, with the individual 3 books that will make up the trilogy, I needed to have 3 smaller storylines. So looking at my original outline, 1 needed to be in the first third of the book, 1 needed to be in that second third, and then I needed to have 1 in that third third. And I needed to have a complete storyline within each of those thirds of the book so that my readers would have a sense of completion after book 1, book 2, book 3. Now, I will say there is a cliffhanger that leads directly into book 2, and there is going to be a cliffhanger at the end of book 2 that leads directly into book 3. But when you have a series, you need to have each book having its own conclusion that leaves that reader with a sense of satisfaction that that part of the storyline is complete. So I really examined the story as a whole. I looked at the outline, and I learned and I kind of realized that when I expanded the points of view from the 2 people to the 6 people, when I had my outline, I wrote down whose point of view I was writing from for each scene, mostly so that I could look at it in terms of voice and make sure that each voice was unique as well. And since I had already done that, I was able to kind of look at each one and say, okay, well, whose story has kind of naturally come out to be more prevalent in this first third of the book? And when I was able to kind of look there, I noticed that with very few tweaks, book 1 could easily be the older daughter Margaret's story. So I was able to look at it and edit it and add some scenes and kind of tweak some different things so that her story is that main story arc in book 1. Now, her story's not going to be 100% done at the end of book 1. She's still going to have some learning and growing to do. And so if you're reading that first book and you're like, well, I want more from Margaret and what's going on here, it's definitely going to be a part of books 2 and 3. Things are not going to be completely set for her at the end of book 1. But by the end of that first book, she has come to realize that the biggest misbelief that she had was actually a lie. And she'll still feel some lingering guilt from a big mistake that she thinks she's made. And she's still going to struggle in the second and third books as well. Because we all are constantly struggling through different things. Just because one phase of our life seems to have come to completeness doesn't mean that we're still not going to struggle going forward. So then I looked at the other 2 parts, and it was very obvious that the main person in book 3, the person whose story is really coming to a climax and a conclusion within the overall picture, was Bridget. So hers is going to be kind of opposite of Bridget's. Her story is going to be steadily building in books 1 and 2, and then in book 3, it's going to really focus in on her character arc. So I had books 1 and 3 pretty easily figured out, and then I had to look at book 2, and I had 3 more points of view characters that I could use, and they were actually the 3 older brothers of Bridget, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. And I realized that all their stories were heavier in that second third of the overall story. So really, I could have chosen any one of them. And so this made me think and dig even deeper about what I could do with each character. And I looked at their growth, and I also looked at who had the most internal conflict. And so through looking at all of that, I finally decided that it was going to be the youngest of those 3 brothers, Raphael. And so his main character arc is going to be book 2. Again, he's going to build in book 1, and some other things are going to happen in book 3 that have a big effect on his journey, but his book is mainly going to be book 2. And I'm also going to feature Michael and Gabriel very heavily in the second book as well. And so really, the second book is going to be these 3 brothers. They each have very different storylines, and so it's going to be fun exploring each one, especially in that second third of the book. So I took a lot of early feedback from looking at what my mom said was she was reading the whole overall story. I was able to talk to my niece who's in the age bracket of who I'm going to be gearing the story to, as well as talking to my students about what they're interested in and what they want more of. And even though this is a project that I've been working on for, I think, maybe 6 years now, and it's still taking a long time and taking different twists and turns, but I am really, really taking all of this feedback. I'm loving what people are saying about it, and I'm really liking the direction that this book is going in. It's going from simply a dual point of view story to more of a family epic story, and getting to look at so many different facets of the Civil War, of the people that lived it, and of the situations that came because of it. As always, I love learning. I love writing about history, and this is something that I really enjoy doing. So in terms of release, I'm hoping to have book 1 out within the next month or so, and books 2 and 3 will likely be out by the end of the year. I've got the bulk of everything done and taken care of. It's just a matter of tweaking, and in the case of book 2 especially, diving deeper into some of these storylines. I think when I was looking at book 3, it's pretty much taking care of itself. So really almost done with book 1. It just has to go through hopefully only 1 or 2 edits. And then book 2, I'm going to hopefully have out within the next few months as well. And then book 3 after that. Now, if you're interested in knowing more about how I plotted my other series, just let me know in the comments below. I've got 2 series out right now. One of them's more of a standalone series, and then one of them is a Mackinac time travel book, and then I'm also working on a American Revolution 4-book series. So I can definitely speak to those as well, because I've done the planning for each of those trilogies in a different style as well. If you have any other questions or comments, again, please leave them in the comment sections below, or if you have any other questions or any other topics that you'd like me to talk about. I really appreciate you listening, and I hope that I may have helped you in your own stories, or you just get an extra little sneak peek of behind the scenes of what it takes for writing these books. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.